I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Osborne School District number 8. We're going to go ahead and start with our land acknowledgement before we go on to the Pledge of Allegiance and school presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Board Member Ramos.
All right, thank you. Arizona is home to 22 tribal nations. Osborne School District is situated on the homelands of the Akimel O'odham and the Pi'ipaash people. Osborne School District recognizes the original inhabitants of these lands and recognizes they still reside throughout the city of Phoenix. We recognize their wisdom, impact, and generosity towards us. Osborne School District is surrounded by the original Salt River canals that were constructed by the ancestral Sonoran Desert people, the Huhugam. These canals created a livelihood for the people and are still in use today. We acknowledge the modern indigenous people that inhabited this area as well as their Sonoran Desert ancestors, the Huhugam.
Thank you so much, Board Member Ramos. I'm going to move on to our Pledge of Allegiance. And do we have somebody? Okay, I'll go ahead and start in the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody stand up. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're going to move on to our school presentation. And we have our community preschool coordinator, Jill Singh, will provide an overall update on community preschools. And Jill, I thought I saw you. There she is. Yes, muy bien, muy bien. Jill is my partner in crime at the 7th Avenue Street Fair.
Yes.
I think we got some kids enrolled together there.
We did, by the way. We're looking at enrollment, yeah.
Yes, wonderful.
Only one way to go but up. So last time we visited, we had a few things. Oh, sorry for those of you I have not formally met, or I always say whose children I haven't had in school. I am Jill Singh. I'm the preschool coordinator. I kind of oversee community developmental and then also Montessori primary, which is the combination 3, 4, and 5 program. So last year we were in the throes of assessment, and so we have some fantastic updates. So when we last were here, we had Encanto's a 3-star quality score and Solano's 4-star quality score, and we were waiting for Longview, and I'm so excited. Longview also received a 4-star as far as their quality first assessments, and so those are all public ratings for quality of program that go out to the public. So that was fantastic. The highest you can get is 5, and it's very hard to get 5, and we've never had scores like this, so I'm elated, but a lot of it goes to the wonderful dedication and ability of the teachers and assistants who are in the room that really make it possible. So one of the big things, and Kathy kind of touched on this last year at the close, we were also last year looking at picking a new preschool curriculum. The one that we had we were kind of ready to move on from. And we are down to McGraw-Hill and Benchmark. And after we kind of test drove the few programs, we went with the Benchmark Ready to Advance, which matches what we do right now for the rest of the grades. So far, we have done initial PD, and we are going to go back to future PD next year because we're also doing some other PD that has some a little bit more significance right now for our teachers. And it's nice because Benchmark also supports our EQUIP preschool standard about teacher-led experiences and child-initiated experiences to support all of the learners. There are just some very beautiful and robust materials that are available in Benchmark, and so we picked that one, and we're in the process of continuing to implement it, and then also just kind of check and see areas that we need to get a little bit more clarification on, or like how to fine-tune things. And so the plan is then for next fall, we'll revisit that as far as additional PD. So the reason why we took a little hiatus from Benchmark for PD is, or Benchmark for Ready to Advance for our preschool PD is because all of our teachers are currently involved in the Letters for Preschool. So as many of you probably know, many of the other grades are doing letters training, the science of reading, but they also offer it for preschool as well regarding the development and foundations and additional things that happen when a child is, beginning their language and literacy development. This one is a semester long, so we're in the process of doing it and implementing it into our classrooms right now. And these are all pictures of our students. So kind of towards the end, this is kind of towards the end of the presentation, but we've been, as many of you know, we've been fortunate enough to get some very robust grants that allow for tuition-free preschool at some of our campuses, refreshing the classroom materials, just doing beautiful things to the playgrounds that are worth it for the children, and just enhancing their opportunity and their experiences to all the classrooms. And we just recently received some additional funds through Quality First that just will just kind of take us up a notch as well. So we feel very fortunate because every child who comes into our program is able to experience, and it's not just for the families who are on just the HQEL who receive the tuition free, but even our Encanto school where there is tuition being paid or scholarships, they are also receiving these enhancements to their playgrounds and their classrooms as well. And then just to briefly touch on like our plans for next year, besides the continued work in our benchmark ready to advance PD, we are working to add additional classrooms, 3-year-old classroom. I know that should excite some of us very much. And then also the primary room, another primary room of dual language at Montecito. And that's it.
Wonderful. Any questions for Jill? Jill, the primary room at Montecito you mentioned it's going to be dual language.
Yes.
That's new for the fall, right?
Yes, new for the fall.
And how old are the students who are going to be in that dual language room?
So in a primary Montessori classroom, it's still a multi-age room, age 3, 4, and 5 being kindergarten. So it's going to be exactly like the monolingual one we have right now, just with that dual language component.
Does that mean we'll have 3 classrooms at Montecito next year?
Yes, 2 primary and then 1 lower elementary.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yep.
Well, I'd love seeing that grow over there.
We're trying.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Yes.
I don't have any questions, just a comment. Thank you very much. It sounds super exciting, and the fact that it's dual language.
It is.
It's unique. I don't know if any program exists that's Montessori dual language.
No, not in a public
Setting.
There may be charter programs, but not a district public school setting in Montessori. So
I
it's a
love
first.
the innovation that you guys, are always, demonstrating, whether it was with our dual language preschool many, many, many years ago,
Yeah.
and now with the dual language Montessori.
you.
So thank you.
Thank you so much.
I just have one question. So
Okay.
we've got these great expansions. What's the plan to market them and make sure that our community knows that that's an option to enroll in them?
We actually just met, Stephanie, Brenda and I just met about kind of brainstorming additional things. Brenda's been doing a bunch. We've had a bunch of different types of advertisement. I have also literally been on college campuses, like stapling things. So like, besides just the boots on the ground, she and I have started to kind of brainstorm a bunch of additional things that we can do in order to get or ensure that enrollment is up and where we need it to be before school starts. So you'll see those coming.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Jill. I know I've seen you out on the weekends doing things and soliciting friends and family and whoever else will help you to table and things like that. So if you ever need anything from us, or if you have any materials that we can help with in terms of get out in the community as we meet with community folks, please let us know. We want to see all of our
Come to
community
fruition,
know.
yeah.
Come to fruition, and everybody know that what we're doing here.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to then move on to District Celebrations, Montecito Spread Love event. Spread Love Awards.
Oh, that is still me.
I think that's still you, Jill.
That is still me.
Kick you off
Yeah.
just with the introduction for the community. The Spread Love Awards, that word love, LOVE, stands for living our values every day. So every month during these governing board meetings, we take an opportunity to recognize staff members, either at schools or in this case, the district preschool department that that exemplify our core values of integrity, equity, joy, growth, and relationships. So I'll turn it back over to Ms. Singh for recognizing our Spread Love Award recipients for this month.
Yeah, so because I kind of have a finger in two pots, being preschool and Montessori, primary Montessori, I included them also because the staff there in the preschool program are just as worthy, so it's kind of a little amalgam of both. We have a few members here today and a few who are not able to come. So I'll start with those. So for Joy, we have Miss Adriana Valdez, who is the health technician at Montecito. She's not here today. But Miss Adriana brings with her an upbeat spirit and positive attitude in the health office at Montecito Community School. Her flexibility to support and adapt to changes and pitch in when circumstances arise has already shown she's a valuable asset to our school community, and we are so thankful. I am so thankful that she has joined our staff at Montecito. We are so lucky. Additionally, for growth, Miss Oxalia Enriquez is a developmental delay assistant of Miss Erica Sutala. Miss Oxalia was chosen for growth because she demonstrates an amazing ability to be flexible and go with the flow when daily changes arise. Her work ethic and dedication to the students is second to none. She ensures that all students in her care are striving and growing to their full potential. She is loved and valued by her students and the preschool staff. I'm especially thankful when I'm in there because I help support the classrooms when Ms. Erica's at IEP meetings, and Ms. Oxalia is she's top notch, and I feel really good when I go in there knowing that I'm helping to support because she has it down to a science. For relationships, Denise Kors, who is our preschool speech therapist, was chosen. Not only does Miss Denise, and I apologize, I'm calling everyone Miss. It's just kind of like what we do in preschool, so it's a first name thing. So not only does Miss Denise support the developmental preschool, but she selflessly supports and guides the entire preschool staff community and Montessori as well. When questions arise, she is an expert opinion, which is much appreciated. She has become a sounding board to myself as I continue to learn more about early child development. The district is lucky, I am lucky, to have such an individual on staff who gives their time and energy to support the growth of our youngest learners. For integrity, Miss Erica Sutala, who is here, was chosen. The dedication and level of excellence that Miss Erica brings to her developmental preschool classroom is something I wish everyone could experience and see. Her knowledge and dedication to her students in order to ensure that each of their exceptionalities is being developed, cared for, and loved is where Miss Erica shines. She does not shy away from digging in and pushing herself, knowing that ultimately she is directly impacting their lives as lifelong learners. Having Miss Erica as one of our preschool staff members is a gift. I feel exceptionally lucky also. The preschool staff in general, we could not have better staff members. Miss Erica, you want to go up? Woo! And finally, for equity, Maestra Sochi Enrique. Maestra Sochi's classroom beautifully captures the lives and cultures of her students seamlessly. She incorporates their traditions and values within their preschool development and acknowledges the rich experiences they are also bringing from home. The families in her classroom and I are thankful for the importance she puts on culture and values so that children are able to maintain their heritage. Maestra Sochi? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So wonderful. Brendan probably wants to get a quick photo. Do we need a break, Brendan? Yeah? Okay, we're going to take
We'll finish the rest of, I've just got a couple of
Perfect.
announcements for just recognitions and celebrations for the month, and then we can take our break.
Perfect.
Just a few folks or things happening within our district that I'd like us to just stop and recognize and celebrate over this month. First of all of our students within the district. This past month, they have been hard at work with those AZ Merit, AZ Science tests, putting so much work, effort. They really, really, really worked hard and put their all into it. So I just want to stop and appreciate and recognize all of our students in 3rd through 8th grade that were taking those reading, writing, and math tests, and 5th and 8th graders that also had the additional science tests on top of that. So congratulations to all of our students for working so hard and doing so well. Up here, I would like to stop and recognize one of our board members, Violeta Ramos. She's been selected to the Arizona Governor's Teacher Retention Task Force. There are how many of you? 18 or 19?
19 of us.
19 that have about a 9-month task of examining the situation that's happening in education here within the state of Arizona. There are lots of ideas about, is there a teacher crisis? We know that there's not a shortage of teachers. There's a shortage of individuals that are willing to work in schools, and there are conditions that make that not necessarily possible for everyone that is certified. There are thousands of non-teaching certified individuals here within the state of Arizona. I applaud the governor for creating a task force to look at what all of these conditions may be, so that Arizona can start coming up with answers rather than just discussing the problem that's happening. We need to be solutions-based, and I very much am glad that Osborne's represented, that our board member is going to be there representing Osborne, representing our community, representing Phoenix Union High School District as well. So thank you so much, and congratulations to Violeta for that selection. This was not an easy selection, by the way. I believe there were over 600 people that applied for this. And so for her to be one of 19 selectees within the state, it's her experiences and her expertise that are being recognized and being utilized for being Arizona solutions oriented. Keep an eye out, as you may have seen in my update that went out to the community. We'll keep spreading the word. There are going to be some events happening on campuses over the final 5 weeks. There are going to be 21st century showcases. There are going to be community events. There will be spring flings and fiestas and celebrations and opportunities for opening our campuses up and welcoming the community in. So please keep your eye out for those celebrations. I want to say a big thank you to the Osborne School District Educational Foundation. They have put tireless support, and they also put their dollars forward to show how much they support this district. And they're coming forward yet again for us with our summer school with a donation of $16,000 to support students as readers, to provide books for those students that are being invited and that are choosing to come to our summer school program. So, Ms. Gentry, I believe that's 2 books for every student that comes through? 4 books for every student that comes. Oh, okay, so 1 book, they get 1 book a week. It's about that library within the house. There's a critical mass number of books within the household, and yes, it may be 1 book at a time. Our 3rd graders wind up getting 5 books throughout the year through Kids Read, another foundation-supported literacy event here within our district. So time and time again, the foundation is coming forward with dollars and efforts to support literacy here within the district. So we thank the foundation. One way you can support the foundation doing this type of work, we have an event coming up on May 10th in the afternoon at OSO, at Little O's actually, down on McDowell. You don't have to be there during the event. There are going to be proceeds that go to the Osborne School District Educational Foundation. Little O's is actually, if you mention OSDEF or the Osborne School District or the Osborne School District Educational Foundation, they will give proceeds of their sales all day from open to close to the foundation, and the foundation will turn that right around in grants for teachers. And finally, it's been nomination central here. We've had folks that were nominated during the month of March. Our staff had the opportunity to make selections or nominations for the Osborne Teachers of the Year, and we'll be hearing who the Osborne Teachers of the Year are sometimes, before the school year ends. But next month, when we come back together, we have our district annual awards. That's called the You Make the Difference Award. This is given out to teachers, classified members, community members, parents, anyone that contributes to the well-being of Osborne schools, students, and community. So it's an annual recognition. We recognize about 5 or 6 people every year. Those nominations are live. I will resend to all of you, and it's out. We'll make sure that it's out for our community if they want to nominate someone for the You Make the Difference Award. When we come back next month for our regular board meeting, it's the first and last meetings of the year are the best. First meeting of the year, we meet all our new teachers. Last meeting, we celebrate together. And so I can't wait next month to be celebrating our You Make the Difference Award winners. And that's it for celebrations.
Wonderful. There's so much to celebrate, and I love celebrating our early childhood education programs. My oldest daughter started here five years ago as a 2-year-old because we had early childhood education there. My youngest is in Master Sochi's class and loves it. I was just hearing about the spring flings. You guys must have talked about it, and we have wonderful teachers in all of our early childhood education programs and wonderful opportunities. So congratulations to all the award winners. Let's take a quick break. It's 5:52 right now. Let's come back at 6 o'clock. We'll gavel back in. That'll give folks an opportunity to take a quick picture and come on back. So congratulations. bring this meeting back to order. It is 6 o'clock, and I'm going to move forward with the consent agenda. Before I ask for a motion on the consent agenda, I will note a change in the meeting minutes for the April 6th meeting. We have the revised and corrected version, just correcting Board Member Greenberg's name and spelling there. I think that was the only correction on April 6th. With that correction to the April 6th meeting minutes, do I have any questions or do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll motion to approve.
Any second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It has passed. We're going to move on into the call to the public. And it looks like I have one, I think at least just one person, right?
Right.
One person signed up for call to the public, which we always appreciate. Kristen, I believe it's Eby. Kristen, come on up. And if you would just come on up, speak into the mic.
All right. So I'm Kirsten Eby. I have a preschool student at Montecito right now, Montessori, and I had planned a whole lot of things to say, and now I'm pivoting to say a whole lot of different things because things have changed. So I was planning to come and talk about some parental concerns about aftercare being unavailable at Montecito next year, and I'm really happy to no longer have those concerns because we received word today that aftercare is going to be continued. So I really wanted to still attend today's meeting just to express my gratitude to Dr. Robert, to the leadership of Osborne, to the Montecito family that has scrambled to try to figure out something that's different. And I just wanted to reiterate how important the aftercare program is to the families that are at the Montecito Montessori. I spoke to a lot of parents over the weekend who expressed that this would make the difference between sending their student there and pulling them, and that was my scenario as well. If that wasn't available or if it was financially not manageable, I was going to have to look at other options, which I really didn't want to do. And I talked to a grandmother who just broke into tears talking about trying to figure out what to do with that and how they were going to make that possible, and really upset at the idea of having to leave. So I really wanted to just thank you from the bottom of my heart for hearing the parental concerns and acting to protect the program and its ability to continue growing over the next school year. So thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. We really appreciate your comments and appreciate everyone who addresses us. Under our open meeting law, which we abide by, we cannot comment on comments that are brought to us. We have to stick to our agenda, but other than to say thank you so much for your comments today. Okay, I think that is it. And we're going to move on to our board presentation about bonding capacity and tax rate projections from Stiefel. Dr. Robert, do you want to say anything before we bring our...
Colleen, were you going to do an introduction or?
Yeah, just
Go for it.
Good evening. So this is part of the process that we've been going through with the Capital Needs Committee. They were presented with the information that you're going to hear from Stiefel tonight as well at their last meeting, as we're doing all of our due diligence and looking into all of the district's options to meet our capital needs over the next 7 to 10 years. With that, I'd like to introduce Mike LaValle. He's with Stiefel, and he's represented the district in our capital financing and planning for many years in Osborne. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Appreciate it. Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Robert, it's a pleasure to be back before you this evening. As Colleen mentioned, I've had the pleasure of serving Osborne Elementary School District for, I think, over 20 years with bond elections and overrides and refinancings and all sorts of fun stuff over the years. So I'm happy to be back, and this evening I have a presentation to walk you through. When we're talking about bond elections or overrides, district additional assistance overrides, that involves tax rates and taxes. And in order to get to that, it involves assessed valuations and outstanding debt and bonding capacity. And so with that, I want to walk you through some of the information about the district specifically related to assessed values. And then we'll get into tax rates and then the bonding capacity. And then I'll run through a few scenarios of bond election sizes, like a $50 million election, $75 million election, $100 million election, just to show you how the tax rate impact would be for each of those scenarios. I'll also speak a little bit about the district additional assistance override as well and the tax impact associated with that. So if I may, direct your attention to the first slide, which is actually page 3, and thank you for driving the presentation for me. This first section is the 10-year history of the district's assessed valuation. There's 2 bars here, the blue and the red. The blue is the net full cash assessed valuation of the district. That's more closely aligned with what's really going on in the district boundaries in terms of the economy, market growth. It's not market value, but it's unrestricted as to formula. So it grows as the tax base grows, as home values go up and commercial properties go up, as new homes hit the tax rolls and commercial property value, commercial businesses hit the tax rolls. The red bar is the limited property value. Okay, that is restricted by formula, and hence that's why it is it doesn't grow as quickly as the blue bar. Just quickly, I'll say that one basically, if an existing home in the district grew by 10% in market value year over year, the tax value can only grow up to 5%. So there's a 5% limit, okay, on the tax value for a home or business within the district boundaries. The only exception to that is when something is built new. So when a new home hits the tax rolls, that can go up higher than the 5% for the first year, and then after that, it's restricted. Now, so the blue bar is for calculating your bonding capacity. So I'll touch on that on a couple slides from now. And the red bar is for calculating your tax rates. And that's all tax rates, primary and secondary. And the secondary tax rates are anything voter authorized, meaning your bonds and overrides, okay? And so we deal with two different values. The other thing I'll point out on this slide before going to the next page is, well, a couple things. The far right, it's hashed. That's the latest assessed value of the district for next year, this coming year, 2023-24. It's still preliminary, but likely going to be these numbers. It'll be adopted the third Monday in August. Okay, so every year we get it in February, the estimates, but then they're adopted in August. So you can see you've had the blue bar, historic growth, it looks like, 24.45% growth over the prior year. And the red grew at 4%, which over the previous year was about 3%, and the year before that was 6%. So that again, is restricted to formula and moves differently. But anyway, some good, healthy growth numbers there. The last thing I'll point out is the 10-year average. If you look at the top, those boxes, go to the far right, the 10-year average for the red bars, limited property value, is just over 4%. We're allowed to, per statute, if it makes sense, project the tax base of the district going forward when we're estimating bond tax rates, when we're estimating override tax rates. And we can go with our projection as high as that 10-year average. So we can grow your tax base by 4% for 5 years, and then we have to drop it down to 20% of that number afterwards. And so I just wanted to remember that 4% because I'll revisit that in a slide as well. So again, assessed values are what kind of begins the process of calculating tax rates. Turning to the next slide, this is just a makeup of the values in the district by property class. So that orange slice is residential and makes up about 41% of the tax base. Commercial and industrial makes up 56%. That's a very healthy number. A lot of districts don't have that amount of commercial in their boundaries, usually about between 15 and 30%, depending on the area. So that commercial tax base is great for your district. It really helps out a lot. And then ag and vacant, again, the district's mostly built out, so you have a small sliver of ag and vacant property as well. So that's just kind of a reflection of who pays taxes in the district by value and by property class. The next slide, page 5, is a 10-year history of the district's property tax rates. So the orange is your primary tax rate. That's mostly formula driven, okay? And that's based on your enrollment, based on your assessed valuation growth. There's a state funding, and then whatever's left over is covered by the primary rate. Again, mostly formula driven. The three colors above the orange are your is what makes up your secondary tax rate, anything voter authorized. So the red is your M&O override, which you just renewed last election cycle. Congratulations. So you continue that for 15% override. That gray shading is your district additional assistance override. That's a tongue twister. It used to be called the capital override, which I liked a lot better. I'm not sure why they changed the name of it, but now it's district additional assistance. And so that tax rate you can see has run roughly around 30 cents or so or lower, 28, 29, 30, 29 cents over the last 5 years. And so what you're considering doing is an election this November to continue that. And it'd be a very similar tax impact going forward. And we'll show you some of the numbers related to that. The blue is your bond tax rate, which reflects previously authorized, your previous elections that you've had at the district, previous projects, and the bond tax rolls. And so you can see with that bond tax rate, it was roughly about $1.40 to $1.52. You can see the high water mark, if you will, on the bond rates was about $1.52 about 4 years ago. But really, the bond tax rate has been in the $1.40s. You can see that, say, the last 5 years. Most recently, it's dipped down to about $1.38. So that's your bond tax rate. So that's what basically taxpayers within the district boundaries have been paying for overrides and bonds historically over the last 4 or 5, 10 years. So you can see that. But remember the $1.40 range, because what we're going to show you when we have the three scenarios, the $50 million, the $75 million bond, and the $100 million bond, all those bond tax rates are either in the $1.40 range or lower, including the new bond election. Okay, so I'll get to that here shortly. The next slide is the district's outstanding debt. And you can see in each of the boxes up top is a bond sale. The first box was a refinancing of previous debt. So the district, anytime interest rates go low, and there's an opportunity to refinance debt to save taxpayer dollars, we would call up the district and help you do that process. It's like refinancing your home mortgage for a lower rate. And so anytime you have a chance to do that, we'd be calling on you. In fact, the next two bond issues in those boxes, some of the bonds are highlighted in yellow. Those are the bonds that we keep an eye on. They're callable. They can be called in at the district's option, only if you want to, early. So they can be called in early, and the call dates are right below the totals there. And so we always keep an eye on your outstanding debt to see if it makes sense to replace that debt with lower interest rates, and again, to save taxpayer dollars. So we keep an eye on your older debt as well. But the last three bond issues, the three boxes there, are from your previous election cycle, your 2017 election. Okay, see, it says Project of 2017 in the title for those three bond issues. And you had a Series A, 2018, that's when you actually sold the first piece of debt. You came back in 2019, and then 2021 to finish off that election authorization. So likewise, if you decide to go forward with an election, the voters voted in, there'll be more bond issues from the new authorization, which would be Project of 23, if you go for a 23 election. You'd sell bonds probably then in the spring of 24 earliest. That's when the first bond sale, when money would be available for projects. Turning to the next page, page 7, thank you. This basically is the payments on your old debt that you've already, the voters have already voted in and the district has already sold. So you have some payments roughly the next 2 years, about $7 million a year, and then it drops down to about $4 million, and then it's in the $3 million range thereafter. So there's a lot of room, if you will, to layer in a new bond election without much of an impact, as you'll see here, on the tax rate, mainly because there has been room left over to allow for new projects, and knowing that your district has capital needs. But that's good. Some districts have flat debt all the way across. There's not a lot of room to layer it in. You have to go above that, and then their tax rates are increased considerably. And so you're actually in a good picture here, in that we can layer in without having the overall debt service be too much higher than what their taxpayers are already paying on, which is about $7 million a year. So this is your outstanding debt. This is what taxpayers are already paying on because of bonds already being sold that have sold in the district boundaries. Now, talking about new bond issues, what is your bonding capacity? That's the next slide. Your bonding capacity is calculated I'm giving you 3 columns because the bonding capacity changes twice a year. Currently, if you could borrow today, which you can't because you don't have voter authority, but if you could borrow about $41 million. That's that first column. And the way we calculate that is your district's net full cash assessed value. That's that blue bar, that first slide I went over. It's the blue bar times 10%. You're an elementary district, and so it's 10% of your value. And then you subtract out what you haven't paid on your old debt. So you have $43.2 million of bonds. And so your total that you can borrow today is $41.8 million. Now, on this July, not too long from now, a couple months from now, your bonding capacity grows because every July 1, you pay off some old bonds on some principal. And because of that, your bonding capacity grows, in your case, to $47.5 million. And then on the third Monday in August, I just label it 9/1/23, but on the third Monday in August, when your new assessed value hits the tax rolls, and again, you have a 24, almost 25% growth this year, your bonding capacity jumps to $69 million as of this September, right before the election. Now, I also point out that bonding capacity grows, so it grows every time you pay off principal every July, and it also grows as your assessed value grows every September, third Monday in August, okay? And so elections are good for 10 years. When you ask the voters for 50 million or 100 million, you don't have to sell it right away. You have to sell it off in pieces within 10 years. Well, your bonding capacity can grow into, for instance, 100 million or 75 million. Even though your current capacity would be 69 million, you can ask the voters for more than your current capacity if you have needs that are more. We have lots of clients that ask for, Queen Creek, Unified would ask for 200 million, but their current capacity is 40 million. They're a hyper growth district, but they know that they're going to grow into that capacity over a 10-year period. Likewise, the same for Osborne. You'll likely grow into 100 million probably by year 6 or 7 or 8, just as an example. Okay, so that's your bonding capacity. And again, it grows over an election cycle. So you can ask the voters for any amount that you want. Obviously, you want to stick with your capital needs and not go any higher than that. So page 10, what we did here, the next slide, is this is a summary of a lot of the next slides. It's basically the final summary of 3 scenarios. The blue box there is scenario 1. If you call for a $50 million bond election, and if it passes, we would sell the bonds in $25 million chunks. That's in 2024, and then a year later in 25. And so that's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is basically a $75 million bond election, and if it passes, you're selling bonds $30 million, you can see in 24, $25 million in 25, and then $20 million in 27. And then the last scenario is if you called for a $100 million bond election, 4 bond sales over time, 24 in 2024, 25, 27, and 29. Basically $25 million sales over a 6, 7, 8 year period of time. Now, the tax impact summary, if you will, is to the right. So the blue column, the orange column, and the red column correspond with the various scenarios on the left. You'll see, now this is total tax rate. This includes your old debt as well, okay? So that column there is, in 22-23, that's your current bond tax rate, $1.38 on your old debt. In 23-24, it's estimated to go down a little bit to about $1.27. That's on your old debt as well. Now, if you have an election here in 2023, and we sell your first sale in 24, it'll hit the tax rolls for the first time in 24-25. So that's where you see it turns blue or orange or red there. And the estimated tax rate for scenario 1, 50 million, and plus your old debt, your total bond tax rate is estimated to be about $1.29 on 50 million max, estimated to be $1.33 on 75 million, and then on 100 million, it's estimated to be about $1.42. And you may recall your 10-year history, the last 4 or 5 years, taxpayers have been paying, like I said, between, roughly in the $1.40 range over the past 4 or 5 years. So all of these scenarios are very similar to what taxpayers have been currently paying for the last several years, even at the $100 million mark. Now, we also report down at the very bottom, the average annual tax impact, on page 10 here. That is purely the new 50 million, because what voters are voting on is not the old debt, that's already on the books. It's the new debt. They're giving you permission, if they vote yes, to give you 50 million more in authorization, or 75 or 100, whatever you call for. That tax impact estimate, average tax impact, if you will, is at the bottom. So on 50 million, it's 61 cents average tax annually until the bonds are paid off on just the new debt. 88 cents for scenario 2, which is 75 million, and then $1.10, $1.11 on the 100 million. Now, I'm going to revisit this because I'll show you what that means to a homeowner and a commercial property in the district here on a different slide. But I'll revisit these average tax impacts here shortly. Okay, the next series of slides, page 11, basically I have 2 or 3 pages for each of these scenarios. So that was a summary, but I'm going to walk you through scenario 1, and then scenario 2 and 3 will be very, very quick because it's a lot of the same information, just 75 million or 100 million. Scenario 1, going left to right, column 2 is that assessed valuation. Okay, remember the first slide I took you through the 10-year history of your assessed value? Well, now...
Mike, you skipped to page 13, right?
Oh, I'm very sorry. Did I?
I'm
Page
wondering.
11? No?
Oh, okay, it's page 11. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I got you.
Oh, yes.
They were both scenario 1.
Oh, yes. There's 3 slides associated with scenario 1. Maybe
Gotcha.
4. 3 slides, yes. Sorry about that. That's okay. No, page 11, so 50 million. Column 2 is your tax base, but we're able to project the tax base. We're able to grow it. Again, statute restricts us to using your 10-year historical average. That's that. So if you look at column 3, we can grow your tax base up to 4.1% for 5 years. Okay, and then we have to drop it down to 20% of that number. So that's how column 2 grows. You see how column 2 is growing over time. We're growing it by column 3's projected growth rate. But again, it's pretty conservative, we believe, based on statute restricting you to your 10-year average. And then, so that's the tax base and then the growth associated with the tax base. Now, assessed values, I should say. And now columns 4 and 5, that's your old debt service. That's what you're already paying on. Remember, that's that graph I gave that showed, about $7 million payments for the next 2 years, and then it drops down thereafter. Column 5 is the estimated tax impact associated with what has already been approved on your old debt. And then column 6 through 9 is $50 million. It's 2 sales, one in 2024, that's column 6 and 7, and then another sale a year later, another $25 million in columns 8 and 9. Now, when you issue debt, you have the option to do it over 15, repay the debt over 15 or 20 years or 10 years, however long or short you want to go. Typically, you want to go out longer if you're rehabbing buildings, replacing schools, doing classroom additions, replacing roofs, because they have a useful life of longer than 20 years, 25, 30, 40 years. Your own home mortgages oftentimes are 30 years. State statute restricts school bond repayments to maximum 20 years. Pretty conservative in Arizona. I think it's like 40 or 50 years in California, as an example. So this is a 20-year repayment for each of these bond issues, but that's because you have projects that have long-term useful lives. Okay, you also have furniture, technology, and equipment. That has to be repaid within 5 years. That's why some of the bonds are highlighted in orange. Some of the principal amount that's being paid off has to be paid off within 5 years because some of that's being used to buy equipment or technology or furniture. And that's short-term in nature, and so therefore statute restricts us when we're sizing the debt to make sure. So we'll be talking to staff, how much are you, spending on computers, for instance? And they give us a number, and we make sure we pay off that amount, at least that amount, in the first 5 years. Okay, so we have placeholders there in each of the bond issues to cover short-term stuff as well, and then long-term stuff. Now, so going to the right, column 10 and 11 is the estimated additional debt service of the 50 million, excuse me, and then column 11 is that tax impact associated with just the 50 million. And at the bottom of that is that average annual tax impact. That's that 61 cents I mentioned on the summary page, the previous page. But more importantly is column 13. That's basically, I think, what taxpayers really, want to know about is the total tax rate impact, including the old debt, for 50 million or for 75 or 100. So I'll show you these scenarios. But you can see in column 13, again, taxpayers are paying $1.38 right now in this fiscal year. It's going to dip down a little bit to $1.27, but then when you layer in the new debt, in this scenario for 50 million, it's about $1.29. You can see for about 4, 5, 6 years, and then it starts to trend down. So this is just a little bit more of the detail and we put some of it on that summary page on page 10. I'd also add or point out in columns 14 to 15, since you're considering a district additional assistance override, again, tongue twister, column 14 is the DAA. Currently, you're levying 1.5 million for DAA. It does end after year 24, 25. If you go out this year, you're going out basically a year early in hopes that the voters voted in, and then it'll be good for 7 years. And so we extend that 1.5 million out, okay, for 7 years. We also then show the tax rate estimate for that 1.5 million in column 15. And then we just show you that the secondary tax rate, but only for capital. We don't show the M&O tax rate. That's on the previous pages. But the tax rate associated with capital, bonds and district additional assistance override is in column 16. So we total that tax rate there, okay? But remember, that DAA override that's already in place is already 28 cents. You see in column 15, taxpayers are already paying 28 cents. All you're doing is you're asking the voters to continue that. It's called a continuation override. It's not a new tax increase. It's a continuation override, okay? So it would continue it. And then the bonds, again, that tax impact is in column 13. So, all right, so that's the $50 million scenario. If I have you turn 2 pages back to page 13, 12 is the footnotes, but I talked about it's related to the projections of growth and interest rate estimates and bonding capacity, but I covered most of that already. Page 13 now. So remember I mentioned on 50 million, the estimated tax impact, average tax impact on 50 million is 61 cents. Well, on a $100,000 tax value home, residential home, you move the decimal place over 2 places. That tax impact then on a $100,000 tax value home is $61. Okay, 61 cent bond tax rate, $61 impact. Or on a monthly basis, it's just over $5, $5.13 a month. Now, your average home value, tax value, not home value, okay, not your Zillow estimate, that could be $500,000. This is your tax value, your limited property value tax value, $152,000, okay? This is the information that we're going to put in the voter pamphlet if you decide to move forward. Your average home tax value is $152,000. That impact, 61 cents on that number is $94 a year. That $152,000 is probably going to change here in May or June. We get new values once a year. So we'll probably have an update to that. It may go up a little bit, maybe 160 or 155. But it'll be pretty close. Okay, so we'll show both these values. Now what's important, like I mentioned, these days, home values have gone up, market values have gone up considerably, right? But that doesn't mean their tax values have climbed just as high. Remember, there's it grows at 5%, up to 5% cap on it, right? And so the $500,000 home that could sell for $500,000 in the district may have a tax value of $150,000 or $200,000. So voters really need to pay attention to that and look at their actual tax values on their county assessor statement to kind of get an idea of what the impact will be for their home. We also then report commercial property values and ag and vacant also in the voter pamphlet. So again, 61 cent average tax impact for 50 million. That's what I'm trying to highlight here, about $61 a year. But really, we're pretty much on this scenario continuing the similar tax rate, $1.38, and it's going to be about $1.29. It's actually a reduction over this year. $1.38 total tax rate down to $1.29 on 50 million. So the next 3 slides show scenario 2, and that's 75 million. And I don't need to take you through all this because you're all now experts at this slide, right? And the font sizes get a lot smaller because I had to fit more columns. I'm sorry to the audience, I can't even read that myself. But all we did was, it's the same information in columns 2, 3, 4, and 5. Your assessed value projections are the same. Column 4 is your outstanding debt is the same. It's just columns 6 through 11. We added one extra bond sale for 75 million. Sorry, it's 75 million total, but a $30 million sale, a $25 million sale, and a 20 to add up to 75 over time. And then the total tax impact is in column 15. That's total, including your old debt. So again, taxpayers are paying $1.38. Now, when you layer in 75 million, it's about $1.33, including the new 75 million. The average impact on 75 million is 88 cents. So 61 cents on 50 million, it's 88 cents on 75 million. And so if you turn now to 2 slides back to page 16, 88 cents, 75 million, 88 cents. You move the decimal over 2 places, it's $88 a year on a $100,000 home, or $7.36 a month. On the average tax value home in the district, it's $134 a year, or just over $11 a month. So now you can see, okay, here's the tax impact for 50 million, 75, and now the scenario 3 is 100 million. And now you're really versed in all this. I don't even really need to say anything about page 17, but I will. We add a 4th bond sale for 100 million. Basically, for now, $25 million sales, 4 sales, 100 million, over about a 6 or 7 year period. And that is, the tax impact then is, the total tax impact, again, taxpayers are paying $1.38. On 100 million, the bond rate would just climb a little bit to about $1.42. So almost the same as what taxpayers are currently paying. And remember, over the last 4 or 5 years, they've been paying in the $1.40s, which is very consistent with this number going forward. That average tax impact for just the 100 million over the life of the program is estimated to be $1.10. You go back 2 pages, so on 100 million, $1.10. Move the decimal over 2 places, it's $110 a year. Average impact for a homeowner for on a $100,000 value home, $110 a year, or $9 and change a month. And then on an average value home of $152,000, it's about $168 a year. So I just wanted to give you, some different scenarios, 50, 75, and 100, to kind of and then help you understand the different tax impacts associated with that. So then if you decide to call for an amount not to exceed 90 million, well, it's going to be just a little less than the 100 million, or whatever your needs are. We'll size that and show it to you eventually, but now you have a good range of what the tax impacts are between 50 and 100. Okay. So with that, let's see here. Oh, I just have a timeline, but I believe one of your next steps that is to bring a resolution before you to consider calling for the election. I believe that'll be on May 16th. So that's right around the corner here. But we'll be working with the lawyers sort of in the background to have that resolution prepared for you, and to have the not to exceed amount at some point when you're ready to drop in, not to exceed 75 million or 100 or 50, if that's what the board desires, and then it'll come before you on May 16th. So that's the plan, I believe. So with that, I can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mike? Mike, if I could maybe summarize some of the takeaways that I get, and it is, I think one thing to emphasize when you look at $100,000, as we put in the slide, that's the LPV, that's the limited property value, that's what we're being taxed on. And I've just looked up a random home in the district, may or may not be mine, and it's $100,000 is not far off. Just because the way that the LPVs are capped
right
over the years, it's nowhere near what the actual cash value of the home is.
That's correct.
And so when you look at that $100,000, you're like, oh, that's tiny. You get to times that by 5, 6, or 7 or whatever, to get to a home that you might have in mind. You really don't, because the limited property values are so low, and there's such a gap between the limited property values and the full cash values.
Very true. Yes.
You can correct me if I'm saying anything wrong here.
No, that's very true.
And this district is interesting and unique in that we have you see a lot of development, you see a lot of new apartments, and I think the word is luxury apartments is the buzzword that you see coming online, and there's a lot of difficulty with that and pricing people out. One of the things that it is doing, though, as well, is it's giving us a lot of bonding capacity. It's giving us a lot of new properties coming online that aren't capped at that 5% growth because they're new properties or major renovations that are increasing our bonding capacity and that are continuing to come online for our bonding capacity. But so when you see a crane in the air in the district, I see it, I go, ooh, it's increasing our bonding capacity.
And lowering your tax rate, because it's adding more value to your tax base.
Yep. And so it sounds like, at least my takeaway is, we've got a sizable amount of bonding capacity.
Absolutely. And I should have mentioned, I mean, our projection, again, I hope we're using conservative growth projections, but it looks like over a 10-year period, elections are good for 10 years. It looks like your bonding capacity could be, over a 10-year period, about 140 million, based on what I believe is reasonable growth projections.
I think that's...
So, at 100 million or 75 or whatever your needs are, you're probably going to be able to hit it within 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty, depending on whether developers build out what they're currently talking about building out, I think that's going to be really conservative as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you continue to have growth, especially commercial growth, right? I mean, that hits the tax rolls. That value is even higher than residential. So.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Questions?
So just a clarification, for the new apartment buildings, for example, that are being put in, how are they taxed? Are they taxed as a commercial property then, or?
That's a great question. There's a separate line item. It's a residential rental, but if it's owned by, a company, right? So they're taxed, but then they pass the tax on to the renters. So they're taxed at a big tax for the whole value of the entire apartment complex. Then they pass that on through their rents to the individual. But it's a separate line from commercial and residential. It's called residential rental. Yeah.
And then for our purposes, if we're looking like, okay, here's this new building, we would receive that, or I guess we wouldn't receive that, but the way that it would be taxed would be commercial, or does that fall
If it's
under
residential rental, it'd be at a 10% assessment ratio like the residential.
Just like, okay.
Yeah, commercial property, by the way, I mean, you have a great commercial tax base. The legislature is giving commercial property owners a tax break by the form of reducing their assessment ratio by 0.5% year after year and for the next 3 or 4 years. And so commercial owners, statewide, are going to be paying less in taxes. We have factored that formula into our projections and the value. So even though that actually hurts you a little bit with, if a $100 million commercial property 1 year, the next year it's still $1 million, they're going to pay less in taxes year over year because they're getting a break on their assessment ratio. They used to be 18%, and now they're going down to like 16 or 15%. Residential is 10, as an example. But they're getting a break about 0.5% a year for the next 3 or 4 years. So that is going, statewide. But we factor that into when we project the growth and assessed value, we're now also reducing the commercial piece by that 0.5% to make sure that we're not overstating things.
Go ahead.
And then I have another question.
Sure.
So let's say, and I'm not saying we're doing this, but let's say we decide that we're going to go out for 75 million.
Okay.
If we decide 5 years down the road, we need a new building or something like that. So I know we're asking the voters for it's 10 years, right? If we needed additional, do you go out again?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yes. So if whatever you ask them for is the max you can get. So and that covers a certain amount of projects, 75 million, and let's say that, 5 years out, we're almost finished selling all 75, but you have more needs. You would ask the voters again for additional amount for a new school or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's not like a limit of how many
No.
times you could
In fact,
go
we
out,
have some
essentially.
clients who, because they're hyper-growth districts, Queen Creek, the Buckeyes of the world, they'll have a bond election, it passes, we're in the middle of selling down their debt from that election, and all of a sudden they realize, we have another school we got to ask the voters for. They could have 2 questions operating at the same time. Then we're selling bonds and pulling from 2 different authorizations. So you can have overlap. Not that most districts don't need to do that. You finish one and then you go to the next one. Kind of like your district right now. You finished your last election cycle, right? We sold the last piece of debt in like 20 or 22 or whenever we did. Now you're coming back and doing the next one. But you don't, if things change, but things change. And so if you needed to go out early for an election because you didn't anticipate something today that, but 4 years from now, you need a school and you didn't factor that into the 75 million, you can certainly ask the voters for another amount. Excuse me. You're just limited to if you can sell it by the capacity calculation.
Okay, any other questions for Mike or for Colleen? I got a couple, just maybe one comment and then one question for Colleen. But comment is, because I was on the, before I got on the board, I was, Juan Carlos and I were the, committee that worked on the 2017 bond, which was a $50 million bond. And, in the construction world in 2023, that money, inflation has hit the construction industry and between building materials and other things exponentially hard. In addition to the inflation that's hit us all, so $50 million just doesn't go very far anymore in the construction world, and we've got a lot of need out there. I'll just kind of throw that comment out there based on my experiences in the construction world. But my question, though, Colleen, is just to want to be really clear, because I think it's important we move forward. When's the next time that this board will see this item or this issue? When's that going to be?
So the regular meeting in May will be an official recommendation that the board can then choose to take action on to approve a resolution calling for election. The May work study is scheduled to be a work study where the Capital Needs Committee shares, and then a discussion can be had with the board around the capital needs, the project list that we've been developing, going into, so the board feels like they have all of the information that you may need to make a decision to take action to call for that election at the regular May meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
I have one last question. So I know you talked about how we make predictions and how that's based on state statute. It's very conservative. Now, let's just say something happens, there's a major recession or something like that we're not really predicting. What does that look like in the future for taxpayers, for our district?
Great question. I mean, we lived through it. I lived through it in 2008, and the last time we had and that was tied to a housing mortgage meltdown, if you will. If we have a recession going forward, it may not be tied to the housing, it may not impact as much. It would have some impact, but it may not be as bad, but it could be. So in 2008, for instance, just to give you an example, we had a lot of clients selling debt. They had a bond program. When we knew that the market was changing, remember, tax values lag what's going on in the market, by about 18 months to 2 years. So like when a new apartment building is finished, it won't hit the tax rolls for about 18 months to 2 years. Likewise, if something happens where we all of a sudden know, oh my goodness, values are going to go down because of some event, it's likely not going to happen for 18 months to 2 years, and we have time to plan. Maybe it means that you just don't sell the next series of bonds. Maybe it means you sell it faster, but we lower our projections in assessed value. So we have sort of this, I won't say crystal ball, but we know, because tax values lag, we can kind of plan around events like that. And we can sell into it if you need to, or we can not sell a bond. So the voters could vote in 75 million or 100 in our example. And then if things completely change, because the market changes, you could ultimately only sell 30 million and that'd be it. So that's sort of what can be done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Colleen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great presentation. Okay, and then moving on to administrative reports. Do we have any questions related to our administrative reports? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to action items. And I think, Colleen, hopefully you didn't go too far. I think this is probably you too.
I can kick that one off.
Okay, please
and
do.
And then if you guys have any questions. So at the work study, we're on action item item 8A on the agenda. So every year, the district's required to have a comprehensive audit performed by an independent audit firm. The firm of John Todd conducted the audit for the 21-22 school year, and the audit report includes the single audit reporting package as well as the USFR compliance questionnaire. Colleen went through that with you guys at the governing board work study, so if you have any questions for her, she can answer that. But other than that, we'll entertain a motion to approve approve the audit.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the audit.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
We're going to need a roll call for this.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and I'm going to take a roll call vote. I'm going to start with you just tell me when I call your name, just say aye or nay. We're going to start with Board Member Ramos.
Aye.
Board Member Greenberg.
Aye.
Board Member Aguilar.
Aye.
Board Member Peralta.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. And with that, it passes 5-0 to accept the FY22 audit reports. Thank you so much for the presentation before, Colleen. We really appreciate it. Moving on to approval and second reading of revisions to policy KB, parental involvement in education.
This, again, is the second reading. We did the first reading last meeting. This is a policy that was in our manual and in our work with our attorneys. We recognized that there was additional language that we're just removing from the policy. So this is asking for approval of the second reading.
Any questions? I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Thank you so much. Moving on to information/discussion items. We're going to start with board development, the 9th Annual Teacher Leadership Summit, June 21st to the 22nd of this year.
Yeah, so A and C on there are both opportunities for professional learning for you governing board members. Letter A is the Arizona Association of Black School Educators Annual Teacher Leadership Summit, June 21st, 22nd. If you have any interest in attending, just let Lisa know. She can get you registered for that. Letter C there is the NALEO, the National Institute for Latino Elected Officials annual conference in New York City. We have 3 members that are going to be attending that conference, and I believe Lisa's already taken care of registration for that.
Nice.
Yeah, so the remaining item is discussion of our book study, working on the governance core. And last week I sent you guys some guiding questions for chapters 6 and chapter 7. So, Mr. President, if you want to lead that discussion, if you want me to lead it, you.
Sure. Hopefully everybody got their homework assignments done. Reading chapters 6 and 7. Bless you. Chapter 6 was really all about boards working with their superintendents, and I really enjoyed the chapter. And so the kind of question that I'd like to kick around is, what are some signs to the community and to staff that we as a board superintendent team are a cohesive team that works together?
And I like the way this was brought up in the book, too, because we can think that we're doing good work. We can think that we're cohesive, but it matters what the community thinks. It matters what staff thinks, what they either see through being here, and you can see how many full chairs there are, right? In terms of how many people are watching online, I'm not sure. So then that also gets into our communication out to the community and to staff members. So keep that in mind, not just the work that we do, but also how we present that, because we're only as good as in people's minds as what they know.
Mm-hmm. Any comments, answers, or thoughts on that question?
I do think that our relationships, and hopefully the community sees this too, are really strong and positive relationships. We all, may have differences of opinion, but that doesn't mean that, we can't have positive discourse about what it is that we're discussing at the time. I we see a lot of different boards around the state, around the country, and I think that there's some very, very clear examples of boards that are not performing and they're not cohesive, and we can probably all think of some. But I also think that there are some boards in neighboring districts where many of the board members may be aligned, in many ways, but you can see there's a lot of tension, a lot of, if somebody says something that doesn't really fit with what maybe the majority of the group is, you feel a lot of that. And I don't think that we have that here. And I think that that's a great foundation for when we're making decisions for our kids and our district.
I agree. I mean, it helps when you like each other. I think that does go a long way. And that's for everybody. I think up here and in this room, that does help. You have that just level of professionalism and respect. When I'm at work or out in the community and with people who don't, know me as a board member, and I say, yeah, I serve on the Osborne School Board, and people who don't maybe know Osborne very well, they go, oh, you're on a school board? Ouch, man, that must be tough and acrimonious. And they have pictures in their heads of people yelling and screaming and all of this kind of stuff. And I'm like, it's not really like that. And maybe some days we're just lucky, but I think we do a pretty decent job of fostering a professional, kind atmosphere and model the kind of behavior that we'd like our students and our kids to follow. Luis?
Actually, no, I was just pointing at you because that's exactly one of the quotes I highlighted in here, and it's a question that was, is our board behavior a model for how children in our district should behave now and in the future? And so as you just see it, I'm like, yeah, that's the quote I highlighted, and that's the question I like to ask. And I look at us, I'm like, yeah, no, we are.
Yep. Elenia?
I think that one of the main things that makes us such a cohesive board is that, like you said, we really focus on the needs of our children in the district and our staff. And so we really, are proactive about asking the right questions and just supporting each other in these decisions and the things that we're looking into.
Yep. Elenia?
And for me, like going back to the question, the signs for me are the indicators. So not only do we get along because we're not pretending, and I've been here when this was a completely different board. So those are the signs, right? Like we are kind to each other, and that's been mentioned in the past. That's one of the signs. The other sign that I would, I guess, mention is that at the end of the day, like we are all, most of the time we have consensus. That's a big sign, and it's a positive sign because you don't always have that. And for me, one of our most important roles as school board member is to hire and fire the superintendent. And the fact that we have had this board has had a really close relationship to the superintendent and seen growth and challenges and address it in a way that is healthy. And, one of the other parts of being a healthy board is addressing the challenges and where we are not performing and working towards, our goals and our outcomes. So I think that is what the community sees. And I'm not necessarily talking about the people who are here presently today, because a lot of the people here, have to be here because of their roles. But when we're out in community, I think most of the time, like my kids are no longer here, what you hear about Osborne is that it's positive and people know the great things that we're doing. We have a lot of families who choose Osborne that don't live in this district, and that is really a testament to the superintendent and the board and the work that they do with this, that the superintendent works with the staff on ensuring that, we are providing a safe, nurturing environment where children are growing and learning. So I think those are the signs for me.
If I could chime in with one quick thing. I really value the wisdom of our predecessors that have set us up for this as well. Number 10 up there is reflections, feedback on the meeting. That was not always part of the agenda of this governing board. It was Dr. Basnet and former board president Radke that put that in place as an opportunity to bring about purposeful reflection on how the superintendent, governing board are while doing the formal work. Because this is, I mean, you interact in the community as individuals and not with that, collective. And it's what you as a collective that govern, not individually. And so it's really important how you govern. And it's a reflection on that process that happens here in the meeting, live time, and becomes part of the minutes too. It's like those contemporaneous notes on how you did that can be called up later, and holding yourselves accountable. And so I'm grateful to them for setting that in place for us to be doing that check.
One thing I would like to see, and I know this is going to come up in chapter 7, but when we're talking about future agenda items to focus on, one thing that they talk about are 3 important processes. So board approved governance principles, norms, and protocols. And those, there's definitely those things in place, or some of them are in place. But as new board members, some of those are things that you all may do or know about, or you've established in the past. But I think it would be great to really review that stuff. Or if we don't have it in place, to put it in place.
That was a very smooth transition to the
That
next
was a
chapter.
smooth transition.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. And like one of the kind of, it's like a protocol, but it's almost probably an unwritten protocol that I try my best to live by is no surprises. Trying to talk with our superintendent in advance if it's a little easier now as president because we go over, we meet quite often, but even before that, just if there's something on the agenda that's, I think it's going to be a hot button or something like that, doing it, of course, in compliance with the open meeting law, but having that discussion with our superintendent in advance. I mean, that's kind of one of those protocols, but it's like kind of unwritten but I just try to treat people like I'd like to be treated if I'm a staff person and not be surprised by something in advance. And so I think it'd be, to your point, Leanne, like nice to maybe write these protocols down, it'd be helpful to onboard future board members.
Well, and it's a good time for it too, in terms of the strategic direction and what future agenda items we may want to have, because as a governing board, superintendent and administrative team, we come together in August for a full day retreat. So that can kind of help set the agenda for our work together as we can establish some of those protocols. So things that you may want to see during that retreat in terms of creating our norms or these protocols, now's the time for bringing those out.
Yeah, I actually was going to bring up, I feel like as a new board member, maybe, not this year because we've set our schedule and we're already a few months in, but maybe looking to the future, moving up our board retreat to January or February, just to kind of give more time to work on those and review those things. And I think as a new board member, it's kind of a way to walk in and learn a little bit more. And maybe that we do an additional retreat in August as well to, to set the tone for the new school year. But I do think it would be really great to start thinking about having a annual retreat that's at the beginning of the year for new board members in particular.
It's a good thought. I'm going to use your segue into chapter 7, okay, and I'm going to throw a couple questions at you to get the conversation going, and I'm going to start with this one, which is: do you feel that the board has a strategic direction? That our board has a strategic direction, and what work might you suggest or want to see to help establish a clearer strategic direction? Elenia?
So we do have, several new board members, and we do have a strategic plan that the previous board worked really hard on. And I think an opportunity for the new board is, you know, even if you read it when you were campaigning, like you probably, it's impossible to remember everything, like actually like working towards, you know, reviewing and aligning, ensuring that we're all aligned when it comes to the strategic plan and our direction. I think that would be probably helpful for the new board members and a refresher for those of us who have been here, because we had it, and then I believe, if I'm correct, because many years are a blur for me, then the pandemic happened. So I think like it's all a blur, so I don't really remember. So a refresher would be great, just to remind yourself.
I think that's a great idea. I completely agree, and I believe that was right before I joined the board, and so that was already in place. And when I joined, of course, I reviewed it, but I didn't want to say let's do something new because now Luis and I are here, but now we're, especially because we're a few years past it, 4 people new on the board. It's really a good moment in the coming months to look at it, update it as needed, and take a hard look at that. Any other thoughts?
Well, one more thing on the strategic plan. So the strategic plan was before the pandemic, right? So I know the world has changed a lot with the pandemic, and so it would be great to look at it and see if there needs any updating.
Any other thoughts on this question or Chapter 7 more generally?
Well, Chapter 7 generally, and I think it's, what I'm thinking about is like we're talking about the strategic direction. We're talking about the other question on that was brought up was what the policies we already have in place, and we're talking about the strategic direction. I cannot talk right now. So I'm thinking back to, I brought it up a couple different ones. Maybe in that retreat we have in August, actually looking to including in that strategic direction an equity policy. I'm probably gonna start sounding like a broken record on that one, but that's just something I think that would help as well, because I'm diving back all the way back to Chapter 5 on this, because it was something I tied back to, and when we're thinking about governance, most of the time other districts are outside the box of management, administration, curriculum, instruction, but I think that equity policy can unite all 3 fronts and not just make us a uniform board, but a uniformed district across the board. That's a little bit fun, but that's just what I'm thinking is like, I think we should look at adopting an equity policy. That's personal feeling.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Other thoughts on the questions or on Chapter 7? Well, I appreciate the discussion, and I think it's it might not be the most riveting book at times, but I think it's really good and important, and it's been helpful, I think. So we'll go ahead and just move on into the next chapter. Chapter, I think 9, and I don't have my book with me. I think Chapter 10 might be the last one.
Yeah, and just keeping in mind, next month's meeting is probably our longest meeting that we have of the year with all of our celebrations. So maybe if we just pick one chapter,
okay,
and I can come up with a reflection question or two, so that we're probably going to be here for a few hours next time.
Okay.
So
That sounds good. Chapter 9, no reading ahead. No, I'm just kidding.
Chapter 8.
8, yes.
We skipped.
We did,
I'm trying
yeah.
to remember what
we skipped a couple, knowing that we weren't going to be able to read through our goal was to get through this book during the 22-23 school year, so to pick some over these 4 months. So we don't necessarily have to choose the next chapter. If one of those last 3 chapters is more appealing.
There's only 2 chapters, and it's
yeah.
less than 20 pages.
That's all right. Let's
All right.
go ahead and finish the book, and we will then continue our book club this summer with a new book. Okay, moving on to reflections/feedback on the meeting. I'm going to start with Board Member Ramos.
I just want to say that I'm super excited for the dual language Montessori program that we're going to be starting up there. I don't know, as a Spanish teacher, it's exciting for me to think about dual language.
Agreed. Board Member Greenberg.
I'm also really excited about the new preschool offerings and the expansion of our preschools. As a mom of 2 little ones that'll be future Osborne students, that's really exciting. I also feel really excited about our potential going out for a potential bond election. Our community is really supportive. We've seen that with previous elections, in particular this last election that we had. And our kids, our staff, our community really deserve the best. And so I look forward to discussing that more in May.
Me too. Board Member Aguilar.
It was great to see Miss Singh and see all the people being celebrated. And also just to go recognize Dr. Robert. I don't know, I think most of you guys know he was a Montessori teacher. And this is his baby, and it's been in the works forever. And I remember we even talked about it being dual language. And it was during that time where it was like, we can barely get dual language teachers for our middle school. So it's exciting that it's finally happening after so many years. I am a parent of, well, actually, Brock, like I used to work 2 jobs so I could afford to send him to Carlson Montessori in Tucson, and to make this program accessible for everyone is a dream come true, because, you know, a lot of people and teachers specifically can't afford to send their kids to such a great program. So it's really amazing to see it finally happen. So congrats and good job to everyone who's worked on this. Then my last reflection is, you know, it's always great to hear the opportunities, but then also said that we always have to turn to the voter when I believe education should be fully funded. So we shouldn't have to do those things. But it's good to live in a district where people value education in our community. So that's always the positive thing.
Great. Board Member Peralta.
I really did enjoy hearing what was happening with our preschools. I went and toured the Montessori building back, I think it was April 7th, was it? And I loved everything I saw. I was like, oh, this is a lot of fun. And I love the feeling. I love what we're doing with the program. So I really loved hearing from them today.
Thank you. I agree. I mean, early childhood education is one of my favorite topics. I love it. I want to expand it as quickly and as broadly as possible to meet as many people as possible. That's what brought my kids and my family into this district was the preschool. I mean, I already knew the wonderful reputation it had for dual language, which really attracted us, but being able to send our kids, it's hard as a parent of young kids. It can be really hard. And so trying to find, feels like a full contact sport, trying to find preschools for your kids sometimes. And opening up those opportunities, really excited about what's happening. There's a 3-year-old room in Acanto. I'm really excited about what's happening at the Montessori, at Montecito, and really excited to do everything we can to grow that and grow those programs, because I think that's going to help us get more kids into kindergarten all the way up through middle school as by doing that. It's a great strategy to just help us stabilize our enrollment. And so also love talking about early childhood education, and love talking about tax rates. And so they got 2 of my things checked off the list today. And so that was a lot of fun. I think we have a lot of opportunity and a lot of capacity to continue to upgrade our facilities and do some much needed work there. So excited to continue that conversation. Dr.
One more
Rivera?
thing, can I add one more thing? So
Sure.
I also really enjoyed the parent who came and talked about, you know,
Yes.
had 2 different fillings at the same time. And as a parent who always struggled to find aftercare for my
Yes.
children, that was like the biggest struggle that I ever had as a parent. Well, we had as parents. And, you know, just, you know, I always love the idea of like parents having a voice and bringing their voice to the board. That is why I'm here. So, you know, that was really great to have and to listen and to know that there were solutions and it was addressed. And it makes me very proud to be part of this school district.
Agreed. How we can do whatever we can do to break down barriers to get more families into our district and keep them in our district and break down those barriers. It's not easy. It's hard, and we unfortunately need more funding from the state. But whatever we can do, I just love seeing that. So thank you so much. Dr. Robert.
Yeah, our future is with the youngest kids. So seeing the efforts that are being put into creating opportunities and protecting opportunities for having more preschool for our community is the future of this district. So I'm glad we're doing it. It's not easy work though. It takes a lot of planning and coordination, and when you've got new programs, there are the rough patches of starting something new. So I appreciate patience as we try and work through creating programs that work for our community. When you guys hired me, part of the interview, well, Elena, you were part of the interview. You speak to your strengths, and then you speak to what you need support in. And I was very clear with you guys that I knew some things about curriculum. I knew some things about relationships with staffs, but I wasn't the most confident person when it came to talking about finances. And I had a lot to learn. But I think that as I'm slowly learning, even though, it's year 6, you think I'd know more, I'm getting it slowly. But I want you guys to feel good in that everything that was in that presentation that you heard today from Mike, Colleen's been talking to me about over the past 2 years, preparing for that conversation that happened tonight. She's brilliant, and she really has such a solid financial knowledge of everything that's happening here, and that was like everything that was said tonight. She said that 2 years ago, that we're going to be doing all the things ready to get ourselves prepared for this April 17th, 18th, whatever today is. So we're in very good hands with her leadership.
Wonderful. Future agenda items, if any. Board Member Ramos.
None for me at this time.
Board Member Greenberg.
Yes. I have maybe 2 or 3, or they might go all together. I'm not sure, but I would really like to have a comprehensive either presentation or discussion. It could be in a study session about special education in the district. I really want to learn more and have more conversations about what programming looks like, what kind of supports we have for staff, like for example, for our self-contained teachers, what does that look like? How many staff are provided? Might look different based on the programs. I want to hear more about how we're doing inclusion, what kind of self-contained programs we have, what that looks like for preschool, special ed. There's a lot of, just kind of a very comprehensive presentation, discussion, something about special ed in our district. And I'd also like to include within that, what openings are we looking at for next year? I think majority of our openings really are self-contained, which as a former self-contained autism and ED teacher, that makes sense. So what are we doing to retain and recruit those teachers in those hard to fill areas? And then in addition, I'd like to have a more thorough presentation on the Changemakers program. Things like what are the exit criteria for that? Something I've heard from staff and community members is that oftentimes kids go to that program and then they never leave that program. So I want to learn more about what that looks like for those kids. What does programming look for like for those kids when they go to Changemakers, and then any other alternatives to suspension that we have in the district, whether that's Changemakers, restorative justice. I know we have conscious discipline. There's a variety of programs that we're doing, but just if we could have a conversation like that and a presentation, that would be great. I did notice it looks like on paper a lot of suspensions for March. So I do just want to start having more of those conversations about how do we decrease the amount of suspensions, whether it's out of school or in school, and what kind of supports can we provide to our staff and our students to address those issues.
Thank you. Board Member Aguilar.
So they're kind of in line with, it's not, I've been thinking a lot, especially today after I listen to NPR every morning, but the conversations on what Phoenix Union is going through, and I'm a parent of a child at Phoenix Union with, the SROs and those conversations. So what are the restorative practices that we have in place since we don't have them? And given, also looking at the suspensions, I just need a refresher on what are we doing as far as restorative practices for our kiddos?
Very good. Board Member Peralta.
Nothing at the moment.
And the only thing I would add for myself in terms of future agenda items would be to talk about aftercare, after school care, and would love to talk about that. Of course, especially but not necessarily limited to at Montecito, but what we can do and what we are doing, and what should we be doing in the future related to aftercare to bring in and retain our students and support our families, especially in the district. Okay.
Can I add one more thing?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I would also love to add to the agenda, if they would be interested, an area where we can receive reports from the Osborne Education Association and the Osborne Foundation, Education Foundation. I know Phoenix Union is an example where they have that built into their agenda every regular board meeting. And it gives more of an opportunity than just community comment for those groups to give us more of an update on, what's important to them. And yeah, I would love to see that.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you so much. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone. Be safe out there. Watch out for cyclists.
I saw you on the way in.
I gotta have a phrase like Bob Barker when he closes out the show.
Oh,
Mine's gonna be watch out.
yeah. Well, it says about pets, right?
Pets,
Get
spade, neuter.
neutered,
That's
yeah.
a good one too, but that's kind of taken,
Roommate Bob Barker.
Yeah, I know, right? Dating myself, huh? Thank you so much for the cards, by the way. Really appreciate it. And thank you for taking that so I don't lose another one. These are my last, I found these my last two cards.
Couple left.
Do you?
I ended up because there's times where I clear my wallet out.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So I have my
look at
personal.
sharp, dude.
That's
Oh. One work or yeah.
yeah, so I have this one. I can send it, show the QR code. I'm getting a new one. That's old.
How are ya?
Yeah.
Everyone cry harder because you're still alive, like really just looking for those but I need to find them.
Have intentionally hired for it. And it's tough, don't get me wrong, it's tough to teach dual language at that level of proficiency, at that skill level, the technical skill level is really tough. But it's tough to say. And we also dual language is really tough at the middle school level because of the number of grade levels of different contents we offer. To do dual language math or ELA is almost impossible because our dual language kids are such a spectrum. We wouldn't have a dual language geometry and a dual language algebra and a dual language pre-algebra and a dual language gen ed and a dual language. You know what I'm saying?
Partner with social studies or something.
So for a minute we did, and actually I don't know if Joey's still doing that. It was just Joey Guzman that was doing it.
Joe Guzman?
Joey? Well, Jose.
Jose? Oh, is he was he a sub at one point?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
He's married,
He used to be in my class as an aide.
Oh, no way.
When I didn't have an aide, yeah.
Wait, seriously?
Same guy.
Like,
How old is he? Is he older?
I mean, he's probably, I have no idea. He looks young, but he's like married to Doug. He's married to Doug Gerstner. I don't know if you know Doug.
It's the same guy.
Oh, here's a picture of him. Ready? Nope, that's in Kenton. That's Joey.
Nope.
Nope, different guy?
Not the same
Okay.
Joey.
Okay. Anyways, so he was the one that was teaching dual language social studies. I don't know if he's still doing that or not. But that was really the only dual language thing that we had. They want to start, just because it is so specialized over at the middle school, they want to start like a Spanish program. It's not dual language though. And I don't know when that's going to happen. He was an engineer in a previous like career, and like, what's that? RJ Lin. Like, I nominated him for You Make the Difference. He's incredible. Like, he runs the robotics program. He's on like all the committees. Like, the guy's super involved. And his wife is one of the master teachers, Jen. So like, he's growing so fast that like I trust him with that program. It's gonna take a couple years to grow in, like it did for me, but like I think she could do a heck of a lot worse than having him. And if she's in pre-algebra, she probably will anyways.